Hello, this is Christine Casey with the Honeybee Haven on the UC Davis campus in Davis, California. Books and videos about pollinator gardening often show large, lush gardens that most of us could only aspire to. The reality is that many of us live in apartments with limited outside space, or might only have the smallest garden area at our house or condominium. And at the Haven, we believe that everyone should have the chance to garden for bees. This means that your bee garden may have to be as simple as a sunflower plant in a bucket. Today I'd like to share some tips on successful bee gardening in containers. Vegetables are a great way to get started with container growing for bees. There are many varieties, like the Sweet 100 tomato, that have been developed specifically for containers. Carpenter bees and bumblebees are the primary tomato pollinators. One edible crop you may not think of for containers is raspberries, as they're typically large, rambling plants with widely spreading root systems that aren't at all suitable for a small garden. A variety called strawberry shortcake was developed specifically for containers. We built a small wooden box to hold ours at the Haven, but after about 4 years it has started to send some shoots out of the bottom. We'll cut these off to prevent further spread. This plant is a great way to have these fresh fruits on your patio or doorstep. Raspberries don't ship well and are expensive as a result, making them a great plant to grow at home. Raspberries are pollinated by honeybees and native bees such as osmia. Many flowering plants do well in containers. Zinnias and sunflowers are an easy choice. Just sow seeds, water, and watch the bees come. Santa Barbara daisy and coneflower are two other preferred bee plants that provide both pollen and nectar and do well in containers. Container bee gardens are a great way to incorporate plants that need conditions you don't have in your garden, for example, high water plants in a dry California garden. The California native rosella needs ample water, which is provided here by placing the growing container inside another tub that's kept filled with water. Use mosquito dunks in that standing water to prevent these pests. Rosella's small flowers are great for tiny leafcutter and sweat bees. The aptly named California bee plant also needs regular water, along with afternoon shade, here in Central California. We've grown this for years at the Haven in a container where it's always done well. Swamp sunflower is valuable in the bee garden as it blooms in October and November when not much else is flowering. As the name suggests, this is a plant that needs frequent watering and is perfect for containers. Like the swamp sunflower, bog sage's name gives away its water requirements. I find that the sages tend to not grow well in containers, but this plant's pretty blue flowers that bloom all summer make it worth a try. Seep monkey flower is another California native that grows naturally in damp areas. This spring bloomer is sometimes perennial and sometimes annual, but its bright yellow color and bee attractiveness make it worth trying, even if you only have it for a year. As we saw with the raspberry, container gardens are useful for plants that would spread too vigorously if planted in the ground. The number one culprit in this regard in the garden is mint. Very attractive to bees, mint should always be in a container. You don't want to learn this lesson the hard way. Ground covers can also grow in tall containers and look great hanging over the sides. Highly attractive to honeybees, Lippia is an example of this. If your container is large enough, turn it into a mini garden that includes both pollen and nectar sources, along with plants that have varying bloom times. This container includes prairie coneflower, which will provide pollen and nectar all summer long. The catmint provides an additional nectar source from late winter to fall, and California poppies that bloom from late winter into spring were another pollen source in this mini garden. Succulents are a great choice for containers and provide nectar for pollinators. Kalanchoe and echeveria will be used by hummingbirds in the spring, while sedum will host bees and butterflies from late summer through to fall. Watering considerations are critical, especially here in hot, dry Central California. This is especially true for most vegetables, which need daily watering. We used this system at the Haven a few years ago to demonstrate the use of buckets to grow vegetables. To make the double height planter, we remove most of the bottom from 2 buckets and zip tie them together. A soaker hose was run up the center as we added the soil. These soaker hoses provide constant moisture throughout the root zone. Oyas are porous clay pots that are sunk in the ground and filled with water to slowly leach moisture into the soil. A homemade Oya is an option for large containers, although you'll likely need some supplemental water during the hottest weather. To make an Oya from an unglazed clay pot, insert a rubber stopper into the pot's drainage hole and secure it with waterproof silicone caulk. Bury the pot and cover with a plate or pot bottom. Keep the Oya filled with water and your plants will love it. Let's review some tips for a successful container garden for bees. Most important, provide a mix of pollen and nectar plants that give continuous bloom. You'll find lists of recommended bee plants with pollen and nectar information, as well as bloom time, on our website. Use as large a container as possible to prevent it drying out too quickly. Remember that glazed pots will dry more slowly than unglazed. Use potting soil for good drainage and fill the bottom third or so of large containers with used plastic bottles to keep the weight down and help with drainage. And if you can, provide some type of watering system to keep your plants uniformly hydrated. This will help them grow well and produce more of those all-important flowers. Please share and like if you found this useful. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.